Got a few people coming in from the back there. I think there's a couple extra seats around. I see a couple right over here, about 2 rows ahead if you want to take those. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much, there's one over there. So if you want to find a seat, welcome to them. So we'll get started with our next session. This is W53, displaying operational content with onboard displays. So Don Bridges is the manager of JANA's consulting operations. In this role, he helps organizations improve how do they create, manage, and deliver information in the transportation and manufacturing industries. A veteran of numerous conference presentations and magazine articles, he focuses on aligning business requirements with solutions to drive long-term value. Don has a degree in engineering from LSU and is a snow skier and road cyclist living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Thank you, Rod. Well, thank you all for having me. I am one of those engineers, so if you brought tomatoes or onions or anything like that to throw at me, please hold those till the end. AEM had said, hey, is this a topic that you could speak on? And I said, well, sure. And basically, our perspective is that you want to be able to have the information required to safely operate your equipment readily available, preferably always up to date, preferably easy to understand. So want to discuss some of the requirements and opportunities that you have to display onboard information. I've got a case study. Actually, it's 3 case studies that I added. So I'll give a disclaimer now and when we get to that point is JANA Consulting is technology agnostic, which means we don't resell anybody's product. If I show you logos, it's not that we are endorsing them, it's just saying, here's an option available to you, and you can go with it as you please. So here's they tell me when you're speaking to talk about what you're gonna talk about. So just a little bit of who I am, where we come from, and then I'll break things kind of into 2 tracks. One is what are the business requirements, and if you don't understand the business requirements, you're probably not going to actually end up at the right solution. And then what are the best practices? How do you meet those business requirements? And then talk about a couple of different case studies. I will mention that the slide deck that AEM will post is slightly different in that I've added a couple more case studies. So there is a different, if you want the latest and greatest, what I'm presenting here, it's a huge file because there's a video in it, but I happen to have available the slide deck, this slide deck if you'd like it. So as Rod mentioned, I work for a company called JANA. This summer we'll be having our 50th anniversary celebration. We're based out of San Antonio. I live further out west in Albuquerque and like to ride bicycles, human powered as fast as I can stand. So that's the tour to Acoma last year. So as you guys know, equipment manufacturers are obligated to go provide safety information. And typically that's been in hard copy format, which is great for the Bridges family fortune because my parents live on 400 acres of pulpwood, which is used to make paper. So I'm kind of sad to see the paper market maybe shrink a little bit. But as an aside, and over the last, I would say 20 years, we've kind of had this migration towards PDF, which is paper on glass. And with things like this, you have another way to go display information, whether it be a cell phone, whether it be a display or otherwise. So that's kind of how we got to this point. From a business requirements perspective, these are the 5 that I think are critical. It's got to be integrated with the machine. Creating another silo of information is bad. It has to be navigable. If you cannot find the information, it's really of no use. It's got to be readable or understandable, comprehensible, and it's got to be relevant. If you're showing an operator something that really doesn't apply to the equipment that they're working on, you're just asking them to be confused. So I guess based on your experience, and as Summer stated in the earlier session, this is really intended to not be so much Don talking to you, but us talking together. What else? Are there other ideas that you guys have? I have a hard time believing I covered all of your use cases. Any other business requirements that you can think of? I'm sorry? Translation, if it's not, which is, in my mind, and I'll talk about this a little bit, into the, if you can't understand it, it's really of no use. So yes, it has to be in the language of the operator. Another, so, and I will talk about that in a second. So your legal department may require you to continue to create manuals in paper to include with delivery with the equipment or in PDF. And invariably, that starts with you have your approved content in some kind of storage, whether it be a content management system, whether it be a file server, and you've delivered in paper. This is typically how we've done things. And starting off with that single source of truth is important in a lot of organizations I go to. I mean, that's the upper level management really understands that term single source of truth. But then you say, okay, well, I want to get feedback on that content. And then along comes, well, I've got paper, but I also need PDF. And, oh, by the way, I would like to deliver it through some kind of a portal. And I would like to maybe go deliver it on a mobile device. And I'd like to have it on an onboard display or a app. So it comes to, you have a lot of requirements. And so this is called multi-channel delivery, or omni-channel delivery is another term that I've heard. But basically, from your single source of content, being able to send the latest and greatest version of information is critical for the operators to operate the machines safely. The second requirement from our perspective is that the content has to be navigable. If you can't find it, it's not available. I've got here, and we could, it seems like the automotive world, and I drive a really old truck, but if you drive a new truck, a lot of them, this is from BMW, and it will allow you, they have the user manual online. It's really handy if you want to go look at the YouTube links, and you can go see how that works if you're not fortunate enough to drive a BMW or a Peugeot. But being able to navigate and find the correct information, critical. Readable. If you can't read that nugget of information that you're looking for, invariably when you're dealing with an online or onboard display, you're not displaying manuals, you're displaying very small, discrete parts of the manuals. But if you can't read it, and if you can't read it at night, and you may say, well, why was someone operating my machinery at night? And the answer is, for some of your machinery, it's operated all the time. So how many of you are familiar with night mode on your cell phones? Couple people, yep. So if you try reading something that is set up with black ink on a white piece of paper at night, it can be downright blinding. And so that's why I guess the folks at Apple came up with night mode, is saying, hey, let's go make this so it's reversed, much easier to read at night. Studies have shown the comprehension is about 30% higher just at night. Oh, by the way, it's tough for PDF to go pull off this trick. It's impossible for paper to go pull off this trick. Comprehensible, and by that I mean, can you display it? Invariably in the field situation, when we're at our desk, it's really not a stressful situation. If you want to set it down and come back to it in 15 minutes, no problem. In the field, there's a reason that they are trying to go find the information and go do something that they don't know how to do or don't know how to do well. So this really is this a structure issue? No, this is a content issue of saying, how do I go present information with short sentences, non-ambiguous terms? Does hit the button mean the same thing as push the button? Well, to us, it probably does. Maybe someone who English is not their first language, maybe not. They might want to hit the button instead of push the button. Something I talked about with somebody over breakfast, passive voice. How many of you, if I say passive voice, active voice, do you know what I'm speaking of? Okay, so you're familiar with this concept. In the user's language. This one's for you, Trish. Yep. And being able to provide, if I present something in German, I suspect a few of you might be able to waddle through it, but probably not. And lastly, relevant, meaning that if you have multiple engines, have multiple types of feed systems, have multiple controls, if you're showing information that's just flat out not relevant to the operator, you're going to confuse them. You're saying, okay, I've got to, if you have blah, blah, blah installed, and it's like, oh man, do we have the blah, blah, blah installed? So making it relevant to them. Basically, this is the personalization aspect of saying, if you, and I'm a car guy, so if you have a straight six, and gosh, I'm dating myself. If you have a straight six, I'm only going to show you information for the straight six, not the V8. If you have a V8, I'm going to show you information for the V8, not the straight six. So making it relevant, saying this is the information applicable to the piece of machinery that I am operating. So with those being what I will call business requirements, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talking about best practices. And these are the ways that you go achieve those 5 items that I just spoke of. How many of y'all have seen this cartoon before? Most of you have. And basically, if you walk through it, you really need to go understand what your end users need, what the operators need, what is the functionality that they desire. Because you can have the best idea in the world and say, oh, we know what our customers want. But if you don't talk to them, you're probably going to go miss the mark. So understanding user requirements is absolutely fundamental, and everybody says, oh yeah, of course we do that. We were doing an introduction project at a large company and had said, we want to understand the voice of the customer. And so we actually spoke to their upper management, because their upper management says, we know what the customer is going to want, which was very different than when we finally actually spoke with the dealers and said, well, yeah, that's nice, but here's what we really need, which is, I guess, no different than if you're a writer and new technology is being introduced. If you don't have a say, if you don't have an awareness, if you don't have, you probably experienced it firsthand. Wait a minute, this is not what we need. This is not what we want. So what are the end users' requirements? What are the end users' needs? In the world of technical information, especially if you go to a conference, and this one not so much, but I think people kind of get fixated on technology, and we call technology the bright, shiny object in the room, and that everybody loves to go, oh, let's go talk tools, which I get, I understand. Having said that, you really need to understand, what are your requirements? And this is why you define your requirements up front. So this is, does it help us meet our requirements? You can certainly deliver information on an onboard display by a web-based portal. You can do it by an app, or you can, and the approaches you can make, or you can use someone else's software, or you can go build it yourself. But invariably, it's web-based portals and apps. I guess I will say that when I started on this presentation last November, I was kind of thinking, oh, web-based portal's the right answer. And I've kind of turned around and said, I really think that apps are probably a more better answer. There's reasons for that, but it's self-contained, and there's a lot of apps that are out there. If you would like to see one, I'll be happy to. I've got half a dozen of them loaded on my phone. Some of them are great, some of them uck. But they're all over the place. So I talked a little bit earlier about silos of information and saying, you probably don't want to go create a silo of information. And I know you say, okay, well, we've got, in our organization, we've got a PLM system. Does that have to be in the same silo as our content, of our technical content? And my response is, no, it probably doesn't, but they have to be connected. So I've kind of evolved my thinking, silos bad, to Disconnected silos, bad. Connected silos, fine. A PLM system does its PLM things very, very well. Does it do technical information very, very well? No, I'm sorry, it does not. Does Salesforce do or content relationship management? It does its job very well, but would I use Salesforce as a content management system? No. Would I use it for a PLM? Well, heck no. So as long as you're connected, I kind of say, okay, different silos, probably not a horrible thing. We mentioned earlier about saying, you have to localize your content. If you're selling into those different markets, being able to deliver the information in a language that they understand is critical, because I can show you a section of Spanish and some of you'd be able to read it. I suspect a lot of you could not. Same for Portuguese, same for French, same for German, blah, blah, blah. So being able to go localize your content and deliver that localized content is critical, I think, to your success. And then maybe the last thing that we see is that people will be all gung-ho to go implement a new solution with a lot of manual steps to go deliver it and say, oh yeah, we'll stay on top of it. And they don't. They'll get something set up and then 6 months, a year, 2 years, yeah, we haven't updated that in a year. If you make it too hard to update, if you make it too hard to go deliver, you're going to fall behind and you're going to find yourself in exactly the situation that you don't want to find yourself in, and that's basically, my content's out of date, I'm not pushing it to the way that I need to, it's too much work, I'm way behind the process. So this is, from my perspective, the dirty, ugly truth of saying, where are at least half of the manufacturers that we talk to, if not more, versus where we think, how do you go achieve those things? So, if you're in proprietary, unstructured content, monolithic, you start at the beginning, you end at the end, and you have a lot of content in the middle. You're written, I didn't get into this, I will in my presentation tomorrow. Foolishly, they allowed me to go speak twice. But if you read, here's a question. Average, in the United States, average reading comprehension level, what grade? Fourth? Third? Actually, they say 8th grade is the average reading comprehension level. So if you, and you can go online, there's Flash Kincaid, there's a lot of different scoring, but if you're writing content that is 10th, 11th, 12th grade, you can almost guarantee half the people are just not going to go under, at least half the people are not going to go understand it. And I don't know if that's something as technical communicators that we really grasp and say, hey, I get it, of course, because I'm working with it every day, but is my end user who doesn't work with it, who's going to be in a high stress situation, okay, just give me the answer. If they, hopefully in their language, if they don't understand it, that's tough. And deliver it as half-page or full-page PDF. It is what it is. That's how you've chosen to go deliver your content. And I guess I say, I think there are advantages to having non-proprietary content, so that if you get upset with Adobe, if you get upset with Microsoft and they do something stupid, that you can pivot to a different technology provider. We invariably think structured content is better. I'm not saying it doesn't come with a cost. It certainly does. But structured content allows you to go do everything that we've talked about in this presentation. Modular content allows you to go deliver just the chunk of information. So I'm not presenting them a book. I'm not saying a section. Here is the answer to your question. Valerie stepped out. Good for her. One of the things that, so ChatGPT, has anybody heard this phrase in the last, and you hadn't, how many had heard this phrase a year ago? One person, 2 people, okay. So one of the things that we saw at the technology conference I was at last week is saying, let's use ChatGPT, only pulling information from inside our firewall. I'm not going to get and that's the problem with ChatGPT, is it crawls the web. But if I say, if I only crawl the content that I've approved that's in my repository, could I go enable it to go answer questions? How do I do this? How do I do that? And the answer is, yeah, you can. And structured content enables, how do I go change the blade on a Model 550? ChatGPT allows you to go do that. So it's some really, really neat things that are coming. And I know as tech writers, we say, oh my gosh, is ChatGPT going to go take away my job? I think the answer is probably not, especially if you're writing intelligent content, because ChatGPT can only go figure out but so much. We're big believers in simplified technical English. Because we like short, choppy sentences? No, because it's easy to understand. It's especially easy to understand if English is not your native language. Don't tell Trish it's cheaper, it's less expensive to go convert simplified technical English content. Oh, so Trish loves it too. So it will reduce your translation cost. The repository will be smaller. I've seen some, Club Car reduce their content repository by 75%, going to simplified technical English. Huge. Localizing your content depending on what your markets are, being able to deliver it. Oh, if I need to deliver paper, fine. If I need to deliver PDF, great. If I need to deliver to an app, okay. If I need to deliver to an information portal, HTML information portal, swell. What's next? I don't know what's next. What are we going to be talking about 5 years from now? Beats the heck out of me. Well, I won't be the one talking about it. But if you have your information in non-proprietary formats, you'll be much more nimble with your content. So the next few slides, just another warning again. And now this is from a company called Impetus. And I asked them and I asked a lot of the technology providers that we work with, how do you deliver information on board machines? How do you do that? So this was the Impetus approach, and they call it Service Express. And it does all these things. Am I saying Impetus is great? Nope. I'm just saying Impetus is, if you're looking at this, maybe something to go look at. Another company that we work with is called Zoomin. They have a customer called Varian. Varian is a part of the Siemens Healthcare Group, and they make these huge machines. The price tag of these things is hundreds of millions of dollars for one of these big machines. And basically, Varian went through a digital transformation project and said, how do we go take our information from our current tech doc repository and go deliver it to the onboard display, the display that's built into the equipment. So this is actually a screenshot. It's all that they would allow me to do, sorry, of saying, how do I go find the information required to go operate this machine? And they said, hey, it has to go integrate with our current content repository. It's got to be scalable, meaning I need lots of people to be, if I'm connected to the cloud, how do I go make sure that it doesn't bog down? So this was how Varian solved the problem. Another one, unfortunately, I'm not able to tell you who the manufacturer is. Like you guys are going to rush out and go Google this image. But they're saying, hey, the company builds drug dispensers that are in hospitals. And it basically, how do I keep track of who received what drugs, and what is the technical information along with that, the instructions for use, or other information that needs to be provided. So they have an onboard display, which in my mind looks a lot like a CRT, and has everything driven through an API. And it's basically, it's on demand, so the information is delivered, it's created from the repository when you ask for it. It's not sitting in the background, but as you ask for it, it's personalized, so it knows, I'm on a Model 200 machine. I'm only going to display the information relevant to that Model 200 machine. And they use a programming language called JSON. I'm sure a few of you guys have heard of JSON, but it's a way that you can go take XML, render JSON, and then go deliver it. So it allows for scalability. It allows for a lot of people hitting the same content at the same time. Believe it or not, most fabrics are made with weaving machines these days. There's not some Amish lady creating content. And these machines, I was at the Pick and All website, apparently are very popular in places like Vietnam and the places where they make fabric cheaply, and they use these huge machines, and these are huge machines. This is enabled by technology from Bluestream. They're out in the exhibitor hall. I'm going to show you a video. It's a 1-minute video. I promise it won't be but so painful. And kind of on the left is using the machine, and on the right it's, okay, what would it be like to go find the content looking at it in a paper manual. So they have one repository that allows them to go search for the information that they want, to go renders the information on this onboard display. Oh yeah, they could still print a PDF, because I don't think that requirement's going to go away. They could still print paper if they really need to. They could still go put this up on your or my desktop display. But okay, what's the subject I want? Very searchable, very clean presentation. Get the idea? And of course, you can have videos. It's very tough to have a piece of paper play a video for you. So in summary, I broke things down to what are the business requirements for onboard displays. These are the 5 that we think are very important. And then what are the best practices? How do you go accomplish those business requirements? So questions, and if you've heard me speak before, invariably, and there's one question that if you guys don't ask it, I will be very disappointed, not to shame anybody, but I will make it worth your while to go ask that question. But questions, and I can't believe it was that fantastic a presentation that you guys are just stunned and floored. Got a young lady up on the front row.
Good morning.
We manufacture heavy equipment, and I would love to take all of our content and put it in a web portal or in an app, but OSHA requires us to create a paper manual and keep it in the cab of the machine. Are we ever going to get them to come into the 21st century? Or
You win the prize. You win the prize. And I told you guys it was going to, if you could give this to her, a lovely AEM Tech Pubs backpack. See, I told you it was worth your while to ask good questions, and you didn't disappoint, so that's good. So the answer is?
I can't see it. It depends.
It depends. What is your jurisdiction? This is my, and I will certainly, do I know all the answers here? No, I do not. But it sure seems to me, in reading a truckload of articles, that the Europeans are much more inclined to say, for these reasons, digital manuals are better than printed manuals. And I think we would all agree, our digital manual, which one's better? I mean, vote, printed manual, better. One person, 2 people.
It depends. Like if there's
Oh, see, that's my line. That's my.
like what if there's somewhere like we were talking about yesterday, was it a remote location? And yeah, digital's awesome, but I can't get it, so I would rather have it printed.
Right.
First responder, and the power's not on the
Absolutely, which is again, why I'm kind of the mindset. This is a much better place than an onboard display, because the power on this jewel generally doesn't go off. So and the question, why don't we use these for service manuals? And because the first step is disconnect. I have never had paper lock. I agree. So going back to I think the Europeans embrace digital much more than the Americans? Is that because of our legal system? Is that because they're more environmentally friendly? Is that because they're just more futuristic? I'm not going to get into the reasons. I'm just going to say that's my perspective. Your legal department, some legal departments are very risk averse. Others, yeah, we can do that. I've read, there's articles that I've seen on LinkedIn that just says, screw it, we're not delivering paper manuals anymore. Their legal department, I'm hoping, signed off on that. And then, what is the specific content that we're talking about? I think safety information will always have to be printed. Always, always, always. There are no excuses. But how to go, towing something. Is that something that maybe is available online as well, or I don't know. But I look at the checklist and say, yeah, it's a printed manual is obsolete. 5 minutes after it walks out the door? How's it available? The Bobcat presentation this morning, showing the manual gone, missing. Well, how do you address that? Environmentally friendly, easier to consume, blah, blah, blah. So the short answer is I think you're always going to have to go print some of the stuff, some of the content. I think a lot of it you can move to and make it available in other more consumable formats. My perspective. Any other thoughts, comments that you guys want to add about that? I see hands, Rod.
I think you also have to look at the wording of OSHA, because it says you must make that information available to the operator at the station within reach or in vision, whatever. It doesn't necessarily say what format it's in. So a digital display that has a PDF or a searchable tool that can't be removed without a tool would probably meet the OSHA criteria. So I've seen in some of the updated standards that we work in the industry I'm in, they're literally saying paper, digital, they're defining the types of materials that are acceptable to comply with that OSHA criteria. And digital is an acceptable form as long as it's available to the operator at the time he needs it.
Good information. Other questions on the topic of?
I would also add in the it depends category, it depends on a global scale, the country that you are delivering to, because some countries do require paper still today. And the other thing is the purchase agreement with your customer. What does that say? What are they expecting? And some customers will accept all digital, but some customers want the paper copy as well.
Other comments on, I saw one back here on this question.
Yeah, it's primarily legal. I mean, for the people that we work with that still require them. A lot of people would like to get away from it, but for instance, a motorcycle or a chainsaw, something that you really don't have an option for on display. It's just an underwriting thing where this 75-cent manual, I'm not going to get sued for someone saying, hey, I didn't know I couldn't put my hand on this moving chainsaw. So it's really just a legal and underwriting thing in many of these cases.
I've recently seen some movements with trying to get away from the paper manual and going to a digital, but what we're typically doing now is trying to make a shift where we include both because it's easier. We'll include a paper manual and then also a QR code in a safe spot where they won't damage or mar up the decal, but we find that helps quite a bit.
Yep.
I think really, just another comment, it's so much easier to keep things up to date if you're going down the electronic route. So the Picanol example is by default, that's updated every 3 months to all their machines. But if something crops up that needs to be urgently distributed, then that's also done. And you can't do that with paper. and I've never seen a mobile phone go all sort of sloppy when it's wet.
And I just had a question for you. So you said that Europe tends to be more open to it. Do you think it's because they have so many languages that they have to have available and all the updating? Do you think that has something to do with it? And Don, could you tell us, related to that, with the language idea, why would companies, along with STE being a great practice, why would they want to own their translation memory? Why would they want to have control of their translation memory? Could you speak to that?
So I'll do it in reverse order. The second, what is their business decision behind translation memory? It's not a world that I'm fluent in, and what is their business decision behind doing that? Beats the heck out of me. The first question, why is Europe more? I think Europe has historically been more progressive. I think the thought of being digital, cutting edge, environmentally friendly, all those things kind of fit into more of a European persona or European mentality than a North American mentality. Is the reality that I am in Sweden, but I'm selling, I sell my product to somebody who's in Finland, and now I need to have it in Finnish or in Dutch or whatever, and that, whereas if you sell a product here, it's probably, if you sell it in Cincinnati, it's probably going to live in Ohio its entire life. It's very unlikely that it's going to wind itself in another country, whereas in Europe, you can almost bet it's going to another country, unless you want to go print in 13 different languages. It's, I think, an economics thing.
Yes, and everybody should have control of their translation memory, just let you know. You all need it, especially with the way things are going.
As the Brit in the room, I could also add, I think Germany was a very early adopter of structured content, ahead certainly of the rest of Europe and most of North America. And there's also a lot of other regulations and standards that are also coming out of Germany. The QR codes were mentioned. There's a standard around the QR codes with the desire that you go up to your machine, you scan the QR code, you get the up-to-date documentation for that specific machine. There's another standard regarding fault finding that's also being pushed out by the technical community in Germany. So happy to discuss any of that with people later.
So I had a comment about when you have an instruction manual that's printed off. So generally, like when I am doing work on a mower, I will make notes on that instruction manual I have. So when I go back to it, it's easily to get back to the points that I want. Are you looking to do that on your digital displays, that you would be able to take notes and put in there?
So the answer is it depends. On some of them, on some of the apps and on some of the web portals, there certainly is that feedback kind of loop. It's interesting to me. We've worked with companies that said, "Oh heck no, we don't want feedback because what might they say to us?" Okay, I can. In a previous career, I worked for a little company called Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney makes jet engines. And we had an electronic deliverable that allowed for a feedback loop. And one of the feedbacks came in and says, "Hey, I've got a great tip. If you need to rotate the engine, use a broom handle. Just, it's like stirring a big bowl of cake batter, except it's horizontal versus vertical." And as product support engineers, we literally came unhinged because I said, "Oh my gosh, that's a really, really, really great way to go nick a fan blade." And nicking a fan blade it can be a really bad day. So it's a way of not only finding things that need to be corrected, but things that are flat out being done wrong. And yeah, with paper, the thought of someone receiving a paper manual and saying, "I'm going to go take the time to go send a help letter," and saying, "Boy, you messed this up," I think it's laughable. Whereas if it's an onboard display, if it's a knowledge portal, the feedback can vary from was this information helpful? Two, you can actually add comments and add photos and say, hey, you got this wrong, or maybe here's another way to do it, or, what is, and as an aside, as a lot of the boomers are retiring, your workforce is possibly shrinking, and certainly your workforce is aging to the point of retirement, and being able to go capture that tribal knowledge before it retires and moves off to Boca Raton, probably pretty important. Anyone else? Any other questions? This is your forum. Young man in the back, I told you I give prizes, so Rod, if you could. So I live at, God, I'm getting old. I live in Albuquerque, so this one's for you that asked that last question. We have huge lavender fields and really grow a lot of lavender apparently in Albuquerque. So it's TSA approved, so you can get past TSA.
All right. I'd like to thank Don for his great presentation.
Thank you.
And just a couple of reminders. Make sure that you fill out your evaluations for this session. Makes it a lot simpler, and give us your true outlook on this, and so we can decide whether this was a good path to follow in the near future for additional information.